There's a whole genre of people who play fake survival Minecraft, and for those people, this would be a wet dream. But I have many fun ideas for real survival Minecraft, but my heart is simply bigger than my hands, and so instead this can function as a way to fulfill that curiosity while maybe being a great guide for building big things in creative. With that said, I usually start these videos with some silly ideas like what if we looked at the Badlands biome and made it a Goodlands biome, or the abandoned mine shaft and made it an abandoned craft shaft. But it's also interesting to imagine, what about if we added an extra S to the desert biome? Wow, sure does look better. This is things you shouldn't build, and I've got 5 big ideas I want to fulfill today, starting with an idea I've had for the forest. Because while this once was the best source of wood, and I used to love them as a result, nowadays it's just a really annoying place to try and walk through because the leaves get so close to the ground and you have to keep weaving around. So what can we do to a forest to make it better? Well, easy. First of all, we take the entire forest biome and we'll move it 64 blocks into the air. It's been a while since I tried this command, so wish me luck. I think we want to go like -10, +10, -50 or something. That should be the command. Oh, looks like something's gone wrong. Okay, so we just got to match the coordinates otherwise like this, and then it will go perfectly above us. Now we can clear everything that's over here because it's not necessary. That should be nice and simple. Okay, go another block down. Easy peasy. And we've made a perfect path through the forest, but it's not really a forest anymore, right? Until we connect the tops of those trees to the bottom here. So we're going to take the very top area here and replace all of the blocks with air, so that, simply put, we can get rid of everything that isn't a tree, and then we take all of the blocks and we spam them all the way down to the ground, like so. Hey, okay. Now, after we remove that leaf litter from the ground, you'll find that we have a tree that has no risk to me, and we just have to do this over and over again, and hope that these tree bases connect up to those tree tops. It actually looks like they will. And just like that, I've done something that many would do via destruction, but I've actually preserved the biodiversity of the forest, and arguably I've made it more useful because now not only can I run through it, the entire way is flat by the way, isn't that wonderful, but also there's actually more wood here now. Some of it floats, but you know, that's Minecraft for you. Very, very beautiful. What a wonderful change we've made to the forest, and what a great idea for survival. I guess you could say this is not, which is the theme for this video, because there's another thing you just cannot do in survival, no matter how hard you might try. And it relates to the humble desert well. This was added to the game so that deserts would have access to water, but why did Mojang add a source of water to a biome which already had so much of it? Are they stupid? They should put access to water where it's needed most. I mean, the number of times I've come to this dimension and needed water for those towers, or indeed for going through those portals, is incredible, but actually, if we're adding water to other dimensions via these wells, why stop there? Why not also add it to the nether? Well, actually, there's a really good reason for this. You can't place water in the nether, even in creative mode, but if you're willing to use a simple command, you actually can. This command is set block, and then the block you want to set it as is water, which is quite debatably not a block, but interestingly, you can place this in the nether, and just like this, you can see that it will in fact work. Even more fun is the fact that Mojang actually has a custom color for the water when you place it here, allowing this desert temple to be the game's most valuable. But I think there's a problem of size, right? You're never going to find this desert well hidden in this little cave. So what if instead we had a much bigger desert well that could solve that problem? Because when Mojang wanted to add a new mob to the nether, they didn't just add a tiny 3x3 structure, they added this, a giant bastion. And so my plan to build it is simple. I'm going to take this desert well that I've intended to build, and I'll make it out of sandstone in this big empty void that already exists here. I think it'd be much nicer if it was a swimming pool, and so let's build this at, you know, let's say 20 times scale. And so let's get a building. Wait, no, that's probably too much. Ah, no, it's not. This is going to require us to go right down to the lava layer to place our first blocks. This is the size of 1 block in our giant desert well. Making these blocks by hand is certainly possible, but what I've been doing instead is using commands, which makes it far, far easier, and we can simply have a couple of pallets that we're going to be using, and that should allow us to make this big old sandstone cube base, which we just now have. So although we could place all of these sandstone blocks manually, the way we've mostly been doing it is by using commands. A simple fill command can make a giant cube of 20 by 20 by 20 in no time whatsoever. I mean, literally, it takes a second as opposed to at least 8,000, even if you have the blocks, and that's why it's great to try out things like this in creative. If they are big and bulky, they're a lot easier to just see what it would look like, and you only really need to use blocks to finish up the last bits. But even then, it's not actually the most efficient way. It's more efficient just to make a brand new command and say, you know, actually, 19 by 19 sandstone would go great here, and so now we can fill the skeletons in from the ground up. It's actually kind of odd the way they do that. Anyway, it doesn't look like a desert well yet, because we're missing the big peaks, of course. Anyway, now we're going to place an absolutely colossal amount of water all at once, with the goal being that we make as little obsidian as possible. And wow, look at that. It actually worked better than expected. That second command has now actually made it all look pretty decent, with just a little bit of obsidian around these edges. That makes sense, given that we're in the middle of a lava lake. The only thing left that's kind of weird is this basalt pillar, which I want to remove, but rather than removing it fully, I think like most heritage features, we should incorporate it into our build, and so after destroying this, we're going to actually place our corners to be made of basalt, just so that it kind of looks like it naturally fits in the nether, even if it is a giant desert well from the overworld. However, the more I look around this, the more I start to think like, it is a bit weird that the desert well made of water is surrounded by lava, right? And then I consider we could fix that. And then I realize just how many structures get so much easier if they have water instead of lava. So, you know, I'm just saying, if you want to make Minecraft... Wait, what is happening? Well, and then I realized you'd get stone in the nether, apparently, which is terrible. Can't have that whatsoever. So that's the real reason we can't do this. Anyway, what else can we not do? What else should we really not do? Well, let's answer that question with my next idea. If you've ever seen an ancient city or an end city, you've probably thought to yourself, wow, cities in Minecraft sure are incredible, but isn't it a shame that you have to go so far into the game to find them? And that's why I had the idea for a starter city. What if there was a city that was designed to be seen in the early game? And I know the villagers seem like they're a little bit of this, but no, I want to use those other cities as my inspiration instead. The idea here is simple. We're going to take the block palette for, say, an NPC village, and then maybe scale it up a little bit. So that's an oak log, that's some oak planks. I think they use some cobblestone, and I think they go a little fancier than I would if I was designing from this from scratch, because they actually use some cobblestone staircases, and they even go crazier and have some oak slabs and some oak planks, and even some fences. So these are the blocks we're going to be using. Let's make a city. Okay, so this is what one of the tiles of my city is going to look like. The plan being that we're going to scale this up and have at least 9 of these be side by side, and then start building up. Now that we've cloned this same structure so many times, we now go in and alter the windows so they look slightly different. But, you know, like replace this and have it be facing the other way. Whoa, look how crazy that is. And simply by doing these little changes here and there, we can make it so that every one of these pieces that was directly copy-pasted can look slightly differently. Then we just go in and add some small decorations to make a layout in between, and all of a sudden, it looks like we've actually made a structure worth exploring. I did deliberately put a ruined portal in the middle here. We'll come back to why later. But for now, we've got, it doesn't look like a city at all, does it? We definitely need to finish up some smaller details. I think the structure obviously needs some walls, something that I can easily add to it. The structure needs a bit more of a layout, so it's not just go here, then end up stuck. So even though we want this to be a teachable room, I want to make sure that it's part of the structure of the place, and that it feels like it is a room, and not a ruined portal that I just sealed off. Even though that last bit is true. And then finally, I think that every other structure in Minecraft that is fun has a bit of verticality added, so rather than just having one lesson, which is, oh, do you know if you walk through someone's house for long enough, you might find a nether portal? I want to add a second lesson, one that would fit into early game Minecraft, and we're going to do that by, 1, sealing off this place, and then making a staircase up to a extra room up here. Obviously, some customization is going to be needed, but this is going to be the final teachable room, the big bad that teaches about everything else. And so, first of all, we'll make sure that it actually feels good. You know what makes me feel good? Oak logs making perfect cubes. This is called good design, and every single builder will tell you it's what you need to do. We'll make some lovely roof designs so it feels like a real structure from the outside if you ignore the current lack of roof. And then we need to make the actual feeling of this place that of Oh, actually, we need a way to get up here too. So we could use a ladder and be cheap, but let's instead put a staircase right here. I want the staircase to be in your face as you enter the room so that you know it's there. You know, sometimes you see the staircase and you think, should I go up that? But by making sure that the moment the player enters the room, they see the staircase, it's unavoidable, they'll have to think, oh, should I go up there? And, you know, then actually, let's make it even easier for them to do. I don't know that you want to be going into the rest of that room right now. I think you might be better off going up the stairs, where you can learn about all sorts of fun things, such as, I think crucially in the early game, that the most important tool in early game Minecraft is probably water, and so what if we had a room just to teach people about it? Voila! Look at the room. As you can see, it teaches you a valuable lesson, which is that water does not have realistic physics in Minecraft. Even pressure plates will hold it back. And when you go to press those pressure plates, the game will craft a fishing rod for you. I mean, I don't know the recipe for a fishing rod, so you'd have to work that one out yourself. I mean, I don't understand. What am I doing wrong here? I'm like 99% sure this is the fishing rod recipe. I don't understand the fishing rod recipe, but what I do understand is that you would be able to fish in even this amount of water and get exactly the same as if it was an ocean, and this room is perfect for teaching you that. And so isn't it fun? You go through a structure, it gives you all sorts of weird lessons and challenges, and then, crucially, only teaching you about things you need to know about in the early game. Wow, what a beautifully designed structure this is. The only thing it's missing is a roof. Sorry, did I say roof? Because what I really meant was woof, which is what a dog would say. But yeah, more seriously, there is actually, you know, something in this, I think. If you wanted to make a big structure like the Woodland Mansion, just make like 2 or 3 rooms to begin with, and then you could have actual diversity as you go from one to the other, and make genuine challenges that form from nowhere, which is probably the best way to make big structures. Which is probably the reason that the Woodland Mansion itself is the reason we have the jigsaw and structure blocks. But anyway, with that said, let's move on from this beautiful build, honestly, the worst one so far, into something else I've always wondered, because I can't be the only one who's thought to themselves like, wow, caves are interesting, but in the same way that it's cool to make like an anti-mountain, like a hole in the ground, wouldn't it be cool to make an anti-cave? To take everything inside of a cave that is air and replace it with stone, and everything inside of a cave that is stone and replace it with air. I'm going to take this cave and I'm going to invert it. This is actually quite the undertaking. So of course first, we'll need to give ourselves night vision. Oh yeah, isn't that great? I can see all the spiders that I actually would rather not. Then we're going to define a rough area. I think I'm going to use the mineshaft as my very vague guide. And then I'm going to set up 2 command blocks. The first one is one that we're going to use to replace all of the blocks around me that are air with diamonds. This might seem silly, well it is, especially because I can't see in diamonds. This might seem silly, but the idea is to preserve all of the air that already exists. By the way, for this to work, we also needed to, quite crucially, go ahead and set our simulation distance to 12, because if we... Oh, there's a trial chamber in here, really adding to the weirdness of this. But basically, we need to set our simulation distance higher, so the command can actually be closer to us at all times. Anyway, we now run all the way around. But yeah, every single block that is air is being replaced with diamonds, and this is kind of a safe placeholder block. There are no naturally spawning diamond blocks outside of the Woodland Mansion, and so we can preserve all of our air now, which is going to be useful because we're about to destroy everything else by replacing it with air. Then I need to get back to my... Wait, what? Oh, the command is still running. I can't turn it off because I'm... Okay. Then we need to go back to this block, which is a lot easier said than done. Okay, I've turned it off now. Thank God. Then we need to make a second command block that's going to go next to it, and this is going to be the exact same thing, but we're going to replace all of the stone with air. Then we do the exact same thing of making it a repeat command block that needs redstone. That is something that is crucial. We run around and we replace all of the stone that exists with air, which is what we should theoretically be doing right now. No, it's being replaced by diamonds. I must have turned on the diamond switch again. Oh no. Oh, right, because it's still running. Oh no, I ruined this. Whoopsie. This should be, we'll turn this into a chain block or whatever, or an impulse block. Okay, so now we're going to try this again. Ah, there we go. We were accidentally replacing the stone with air, then immediately replacing it with diamonds. But now we can run through here pretty effectively, removing all of the stone, which is great. It's exactly what I wanted to do in the first place. I mean, there is a bit of a problem, though, which is that so many blocks are not stone, but also make up part of this cave. So I think the logical thing to do at this point would be to go back to my command blocks, and then to make a whole bunch more for every single other block we want to remove. So right now I've got a command block that, replaces all stone with air. But what if we did the same for granite, diorite, for everything else like that? So then we go back into Spectator, because right now it hasn't been working that well, but now we can remove everything, all the way down to Deep Slate. And we can start to see what an anti-cave should in fact look like. This is something I've always wanted to do in survival because I just love the idea of like weird art projects, seeing what something would create if you happen to do it. But obviously it takes so much time that isn't it nice to have commands that can replace all of your copper ore with air? Okay, it still took some time, but as you can see, we've now done it. We have a representation of our cave using diamond blocks. And we have one thing left to do, which is to change that original block that we used all the way back, if I can find it, and then change it back so that we have all of the diamond being replaced by stone, and that should finish the beautiful transformation here. I hope. I mean, honestly, I don't even know. What I do know is that I finally get to turn off all of these switches. Hopefully won't need to turn those on again. I'll replace this one with a regular block just to make sure it doesn't turn on. Then I'll turn this one back into a repeat block. And then we go in here and we just change that diamond replace air with stone replace diamond. Stone replace diamond underscore block. It might have to be stone 0. Let's find out. Oh, no, there we go. And then we jump back into Spectator and we roam around until it's all filled in again. So again, isn't it nice? You can kind of use diamond to hold your place when you're doing silly command stuff like this. But this is what our anti-cave is starting to look like. But I'm sure you want to skip ahead to the final results. You know, it's not like we're just saving dozens of hours of survival content. I think you'd like to save dozens of minutes of me flying around. And so... wow, it seems as though you jumped inside of the retention nether portal, where obviously we need to make sure that everything is exciting right now all the time. And so here are the final results. As you can see, some pretty weird ones. The first being that you can see this original cave that we were in, at least destroyed all the way down to Deep Slate. But then you can see that like the air in the mine shaft is perfectly kept. The same is true if we look inside of the trial chambers. You'll find that down here it's just a bunch of stone, because obviously there's air in a trial chamber. It kind of caught up with the rest of this. There are some very, very strange looking formations because you're effectively seeing things in reverse. But what I didn't properly realize or expect until we went into this is that this reverse formation is basically how the Nether looks. Does it look a little bit to you like Nether Generation, where you gotta weave between things and where, you know, like it's kind of inconsistent? That's because the Nether basically uses the technique I just used, and I entirely forgot about it until I got right here. But fun. If you ever want to make yourself a Nether in the overworld, or indeed if you want to make caves in the overworld, you could do this in reverse for the Nether. Turn the current netherrack into air, and the current air into walls, and you would make a cave dimension. I don't think you wanted to make a cave dimension. Let's be honest, if there's a 4th dimension, we all know it leads to the melon space. Anyway, with that said, let's move into the 5th idea I've had. I've always thought the geodes are such an underutilized structure in Minecraft, but they do just kind of exist here, sadly in the middle of nowhere. But what if we could fix that? Well, we probably can. The first step is simple. We're going to take the geode, and then we're going to use a structure block, and we're going to make a copy of this entire structure. So that's going to be fairly tricky to get right because of this. But let's just for now start by scaling up to 15 that way, 15 this way. Oh, that's too much. And 15 this way. as you can see, there's now a geode plus some fat that we can trim on each direction. This is my geode dot my structure, or whatever they're going to call it. Now, we could export that if we wanted to really be sure that we didn't lose it. But I'm pretty sure it's good, right? Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Okay, now we load in a copy to make sure that it works just fine. Is this a regular geode? I think it is. And then we use this copy of the geode for what we're about to do next, which I will admit is probably a bit silly. So now I make a geode 13 blocks away, and then I make a geode 26 blocks away, and then we load it in, and then we make a geode that's minus 13 blocks away, and we load it in, and then one that's minus 26 blocks away, and we load that in. That should give us 5 geodes neatly sitting in a line. Yeah, neatly sitting in a line, right? Yeah, that's what I see, certainly. And then that represents these 5 blocks here. So now what we have to do is the exact same, but forwards and backwards, 1 geode space. Load a geode here, move this coordinate down, then do the same over there, and then do the same. No, my brain is breaking. This is too much. But we now have, it's gonna be a giant geode, I swear. Okay, 15 geodes. I've got a lot of balls right here, I've got to say. But I'm going to go ahead and now try to move this so that the X is 26, but the Z is 13. And then we'll do the same, but 0. And then the same, but it's minus 13. And then that will create the top layer. Then we do the reverse for minus 26. Okay, yeah, I've just about worked this out, hopefully. And then 0. And we do 13. And what this should represent is the bottom layer of the geode. Do you see how the geode is like a 3 by 5 by 3 cube, or a 5 by 5 cube minus the corners? Now that I've done those, I should have a 5 by 5 cube minus the corners. Honestly, it actually does look kind of cool, especially with the main geode being slightly down. That's a feature, not a bug, trust me. Anyway, we can now start to scale this up a little bit by going up a level, where we now need to go, oh dear God. Honestly, I don't envy anyone who ever has to make something in a sphere in Minecraft. Man, I've got to say that building spheres is hard, which is why I'm so glad that from the beginning, I'm pretty sure what I was actually building a giant version of was a Minecrafty style geode, because what are spheres doing in Minecraft anyway? That's why they're so horribly utilized. And so what I've made instead, I'm prepared to admit is a masterpiece, but after placing a lot of smooth basalt in lovely columns, I've created this. Okay, it's maybe leaves a bit, I mean, it's clearly the top that's missing that's causing the problems, right? So let's have a nice layer of amethyst up there. Oh yeah. Oh, I honestly, am I looking at a giant geode right now? I honestly can't tell. Honestly, shame on Mojang for not coming up with this design by themselves. And honestly, I have to say that even though most of the time I find creative building to be less satisfying than survival, genuinely placing long rows of amethyst is the exception. Anyway, there's a good idea in there somewhere for anyone who wants to make it, but I think I've done a great job. But I also am going to have to concede, you know, for a 5th idea, I'm not really in love with it. Which is why I figured, why don't we learn from our 3rd idea of the starter city and from its shortcomings, and also learn from the wider failings of the Minecraft community, because for so long we've been thinking that to make a big house, we need to scale it up, make it bigger. This is why starter houses are the sizes of mansions now, because people insist that bigger is the answer. But what if they're thinking in the wrong dimension? That's right, we're gonna make end houses. No, wait, I think we've already done that. Okay, so let's come back to the overworld, change dimension once more, and look at this, an NPC village. Specifically, I want you to look at this house right here. It's one of my favorite house designs. It doesn't really seem to serve any function. It's a nice smoker, I get. Wait, how is it level with the crops? Oh, that's a fun illusion. Anyway, what's fun about this is it's a really simple house design. It's got seating under the stairs. This was a house designed by someone who loves compact houses, and honestly, as someone who lived in a Victorian terrace, super narrow but long houses are something I get down with. I currently live in a cheese wedge in real life. That sounds like a joke, but it's not. And what's interesting is the fact that, like, I like the idea of utilizing weird proportions. Why don't we do this in Minecraft? Okay, you know the name of the game here. We're going to make a little section of the house. We're going to save that section of the house. And then we're going to switch to load mode. Actually, wait, we're going to save 2 versions of this house. We're going to save the full version. And then we're going to save just the ground floor version. This is a version that has stairs. But now we're going to remove the stairs from it to have a flawless and a flawed version. So this is... We'll also remove the ceiling, I guess. Do we need a ceiling for this? You know, future me can come up with that. Anyway, let's leave everything besides that upside down slab now. And then also remove this and make it into a more cozy living area. Perhaps one punctuated by amethyst. Oh yeah, now we're talking, right? Anyway, now we can take this and we can save this as Villager House 2. Yeah, that's right, there's a sequel. And if we save this, then now what we can do when we switch to load is we can save, move in that same house, but on -5 of the X. We actually want to go -4, because we want to remove the back of the house and replace it with another one of these. Do you see how we just made the house a little longer? I think you do. Then, we can do the same, but add whatever the dimensions are, -9, I guess it would be, to make it longer again. And then, because we're adding 5 each time, we go to -14, but this time I can actually add that staircase room back in there, and boom, now I've got a procedural way to generate a house that can get longer without ever having to get wider. And so, you know where this is going? Oh yeah, look at this beautifully, gloriously long house. And what's great is you've still got privacy spaces just via these staircases. Don't question why there's slabs in this one, but you get all these privacy spaces and it's absolutely beautiful. In fact, you take a left turn and you'll notice there's even more house waiting for you here. Look at all this living space area and look at how well segregated it is so that you can keep your friends separate to your other friends they don't get along with, separate to your slightly racist relatives, separate to the relatives you do love that mean well, but they don't really like talking to people anymore. You can keep them all separated because it's a horizontal living space. A vertical living space. Now that's a separate good idea. Honestly, I want to jump on it right now, but instead I must say that these are things I don't want to build in survival, but this last one has gotten the closest to like, you know what, maybe I just should. Maybe the longhouse is actually a beautiful idea that everyone should be inspired by. But more seriously, I hope you have all enjoyed. This is, of course, a fun little semi-reboot of a series that I used to run on this channel called Don't Build This, and so if you want to check out any of the other ones, you totally can. But otherwise, I really enjoyed this, and if you do too, let me know, because I literally multiple times a week I have dumb ideas that I have to write down and be like, oh, I should do that, and it's fun having an opportunity to build it, so hopefully you enjoyed seeing it. And if you did, make sure to check out Boss Blitz. Did you know if you like giant amethysts and you wish that they had a golem installed, you can get that with Boss Blitz. Yeah, it's available on the marketplace with an update right now. Thank you and goodbye.